Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rewind number 27, WWE One Night Stand 2008. Brian and I here for what should make for another very fun show. Before we get into it, I'd like to take the time and run through some reminders. First being that if you haven't yet, check out the most recent Rewind show from last Monday, Rewind number 26, WWE Judgment Day 2008. Usually, like today, we have our Rewind shows on Sundays, but because of Double or Nothing last Saturday, we flipped the order of the format and did the pay-per-view review for Sunday and had the Rewind show for Monday instead. So as a matter of fact, go ahead and give both those shows a listen. This past Wednesday via our social media pages, the first part of our summer lineup for the month of June was released. So starting on next Sunday, June 7th, we'll have Rewind number 28. We'll have WWE One Night Stand 2005, of course, back in 2005, the WWE did their ECW reunion show, which featured many of the stars of the past. I won't go into full detail on it because that's next week's show, but I will say that's one of my all-time favorite pay-per-view events. So I really look forward to doing that one. And then following that on Monday, June 8th, we'll have our official NXT TakeOver In Your House review and recap. For TakeOver In Your House, we have 5 announced matchups, including Finn Balor versus Damian Priest, Johnny Gargano versus Keith Lee for the North American title, a triple threat match for the NXT Women's Championship, Charlotte Flair defending against Rhea Ripley and Io Shirai. We have Tommaso Ciampa versus Karrion Kross, and in the main event, it'll be Adam Cole versus Velveteen Dream for the NXT Championship. If Velveteen loses, then he'll no longer be able to challenge for the NXT title as long as Adam Cole is champion. And I believe this Wednesday there may be another stipulation that's going to be added to that. Then on Sunday, June 14th, we'll be doing Rewind number 29 for you. And for that, we'll be doing WWF King of the Ring 1998, which features the 1998 King of the Ring tournament semi and final matchups. The famous Undertaker and Mankind Hell in a Cell, and Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Kane in a first blood match in the main event for the WWF Championship, where if Kane doesn't win the title, he's going to light himself on fire. I was hoping you popped for that one.
In my head, I did. That was, you should have said it in his voice.
I was waiting to see if you, catch it.
If I don't win the title, I'll set myself on fire.
If I don't win the title, I will light myself on fire.
How did people, if I would have heard that back then, I would have started laughing my ass off.
Exactly.
I wouldn't have taken that seriously at all.
I'm pretty sure also we'll poke some more fun at that when we get to that show. Then for Monday, June 15th, we'll have our WWE Backlash 2020 review and recap. That show features Drew McIntyre and Bobby Lashley for the WWE Championship, a 2-on-1 handicap match for the Universal Championship, John Morrison, The Miz versus Braun Strowman. And then we also have the greatest wrestling match ever. We have Edge and Randy Orton in a straight-up wrestling match. In a straight-up wrestling match.
Yeah, because, the greatest stipulation of all time is straight-up wrestling match.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I hope it does turn out to be an actual great matchup, and I hope it turns out fine. But why would you ever market something as the greatest ever?
It could be like a 4-star match, and you just made it disappointing.
Exactly. You're just setting yourself up right there.
It's like this. It's going to be. What's going to be really funny if in the first couple seconds Randy Orton hits an RKO and wins.
Yeah, and then he just takes that and he's like, "That was the greatest match ever." That'd be a funny troll. I'm not gonna lie. And then for Sunday, June 21st, Rewind number 15, or not 15. Oh my God, number 30 will be coming your way. And for that show, we'll be doing WWE Fatal 4-Way 2010. The deal with that show is every match is a Fatal 4-Way match. No, I'm just kidding. However, the two main matches are indeed fatal four-way matches. I don't know. This is kind of a wild card to just throw in there or whatever, but I just saw it and I'm like, you know what? I have to just talk about how they called a pay-per-view fatal four-way.
Because they did it 2 years, right?
No, they only did one fatal four-way.
Oh, really?
They did a couple other ones, like they did Over the Limit a few times and stuff like that. And I remember I'm trying to think of the other pay-per-views they did this time.
Is this the one where Undertaker was supposed to be in it, but he got hurt and Rey Mysterio or Kane replaced him?
Yes, yeah, that is the one.
I can't remember which one it was. It was one of them that led to his feud with Kane. I just remember not liking this pay-per-view.
I remember just not being with the concept. I remember they called a pay-per-view fatal four-way, and they do that like with Hell in a Cell and like tables, ladders, and chairs where they just name the pay-per-view after a match. And, you know, like I complain about that just because it's like, well, wonder what's going to happen at Hell in a Cell this year. Or
yeah, right, exactly.
But fatal four-way, where the gimmick of the pay-per-view is like they have fatal four-way matches in the main matches. I don't know. That just seems one of the worst concepts they had come up with. However, the two main matches are indeed fatal four-way matches, as I said. Then the first being for the World Heavyweight title will be Jack Swagger defending the World title against Rey Mysterio, Big Show, and CM Punk. And the other being John Cena defending the WWE Championship against Randy Orton, Edge, and Sheamus. So I know, odd choice, but I just thought we'd mix up and do something different, I guess. Then for the final Rewind show of the month, it'll be on Sunday, June 28th. We'll be headed back to the 2008 shows with Rewind number 31, which will be WWE Night of Champions 2008. The gimmick of that show is every match is a championship match. Wow, it just seems like I've just picked like two, or like there's like two shows we're going with here that like have like two gimmicks of like for each pay-per-view that I'm just not a fan of, that being the Fatal 4-Way and Night of Champions. Night of Champions isn't as bad as this. I guess my deal with Night of Champions is maybe originally, like when they first did it in 07, they had like a lot of championships, so it's like, okay, I guess you could just do it that way. But for me, it's like, shouldn't like the titles practically for the most part be on the line like at every single pay-per-view?
They should, but I think at this point the problem was maybe there were too many to do that.
Yeah.
Like you said, like what you had United States Intercontinental, both tag belts, both world titles. You had the women's belt.
Yeah, they had the Cruiserweight belt at one point.
Cruiserweight. Did you also have the Divas belt too, and the women's belt?
2009 for sure they did. 2008 they didn't yet. They're gonna get the Divas title, but that comes more so like in I think the middle part of the summer. I want to say.
But even then, like so, the Night of Champions the next year, you had both women's belts. You had both tag belts.
Yeah, and then they had the U.S. title, Intercontinental, both worlds. So, yeah, I guess they definitely had enough titles to like make a whole card, like 7-8 matches. Then they did the unified tag titles that cut it down a bit, but I remember going to Night of Champions in 2011, and it's like every match was a title match, but then like the main event, like Punk and Triple H was like the only match that like wasn't a title match. So, which I didn't mind the match being on the card, but it's just like, why would you like center the show around all title matches, and then I guess the main event's not a world title match, although Punk was like a huge deal at that time too, so maybe that was part of it. But that show includes a couple interesting matches on that card, but a couple just to name off are Edge and Batista for the World Heavyweight Championship, which we just recently did a show with Edge and Batista on it, Judgment Day 2007. There's that, and then we have Triple H versus John Cena in the main event for the WWE Championship. So those matches were always good. So we look forward to going back and rewatching all of those shows. But also another reminder is if you listen to JNC Radio on Spotify, be sure to follow us on there. If you're an Apple user, subscribe to us through Apple Podcasts, and JNC Radio is available on all platforms, including the two I just named, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Podchaser, Podcast Addict, CastBox, and others. So wherever you get your podcast from, we should be on there, and if not, we'll do our best to fix that. So with all that out of the way, like we do on every single Rewind show, let's go ahead and give a little backstory as to how this show all came together and shaped out. So this is the sixth pay-per-view event of 2008. We've recently covered Judgment Day 2008 last week, and also the other previous shows so far to start the year have been covered as well. There was a 2-week span between this pay-per-view and the previous one, a maneuver, which I think I said on last week's show when I was getting ready to preview this show. That's still something they haven't learned from doing to this day. like they'll have the Saudi Arabia show and then they'll come back like 10 days later with another pay-per-view, which, they did that this year because, what was it? They did, what was it? Was it Super Showdown this year? Or was it, yeah.
I don't remember. I try to block those shows out of my mind.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember which one they did, so because I know there's that and there's Crown Jewel. I don't think, Crown Jewel they did that in October, that's what it was. That's when The Fiend won the title. And so, they did the Super Showdown, and then, like, they came back with Elimination Chamber. It's like, they gave away all the big matches at that show, and then they just did whatever at Elimination Chamber. I guess, it's just stuff they either didn't put on there or just whatever. So I just don't think that's a great strategy, in my opinion. But I guess in this case here, it's basically like a lot of, like, rehashed, stuff that had been taking place at Judgment Day that, like, basically feuds that haven't ended yet. And, like, they're just carrying on over here. So, the main program on Raw was between the WWE champion at the time, Triple H, and Randy Orton. At Backlash, Triple H had won the title from Orton in a 4-way elimination match. Then at Judgment Day, in the main event, the two would fight inside a steel cage, where Triple H would successfully defend the championship the night after Judgment Day. On the May 19th edition of Raw, General Manager at the time, William Regal, would book a tag team match between John Cena and Triple H. One side, Randy Orton and JBL, and then on the other, of course, John Cena and Triple H. But JBL and John Cena, as I wanted to mention, also had a match the previous night as well at Judgment Day, and then they'd have their match here. But there'd be a stipulation put in place that if Orton and JBL had won, they would get their rematches against Cena and Triple H, respectively, here at this pay-per-view. And if they also won, they would be able to choose the stipulations for those matches. But if Cena and Triple H won, then those two would face each other at One Night Stand for the WWE Championship instead. So JBL and Randy Orton would win that tag team match, and they would choose the stipulations for One Night Stand. Orton would choose to face Triple H in a last man standing match, and then JBL would choose to face John Cena in a first blood match. Another top program at the time was an interpromotional one between Batista and Shawn Michaels. This feud began following WrestleMania 24 after Shawn Michaels had defeated Ric Flair in a career-threatening match, which would then force Flair to retire. Batista was upset with Shawn for retiring Flair. And then the two would have a match against each other at Backlash, with Jericho serving as a special guest referee. Jericho would find himself in the middle of this feud, having issues with both Shawn and Batista. Then at Backlash, Shawn would pick up the win over Batista during the match, it had appeared that Shawn had suffered a knee injury. Batista would lower his guard for a moment, and then Shawn would hit him with sweet chin music and pin him. Following that match, for the next few weeks, Shawn would continue to sell the injury, and Jericho wouldn't buy it. Batista would say that if Shawn was faking it, he'd hurt him. And then on the May 12th Raw, Jericho would attempt to apologize to Shawn, only for Shawn to then admit that he had been faking the injury. And then the two, that being Michaels and Jericho, would face one another at that Sunday's show, which was Judgment Day, with Shawn winning that match. If you have the time this week, I'd highly recommend checking out both of those matches that we just ran through there. That being Shawn and Batista at Backlash 2008 and Shawn and Jericho at Judgment Day 2008. Both were truly great. Underrated, actually, in a lot of ways, too. Because when you think of both, if you think of Shawn and Batista, you may not actually even think of that feud, so I'd highly recommend checking that one out. And if you think of like all the Shawn and Jericho matches, you probably wouldn't think of that Judgment Day 2008 match necessarily either. So check it out if you have the time this week. And then on the May 19th, 2008 edition of Raw, Batista would defeat Chris Jericho, and as a result would earn the right to challenge Shawn Michaels at One Night Stand in a stretchers match. The top program on SmackDown remained between both Edge and Undertaker, who for months the two had been feuding for the World Heavyweight Championship. The first encounter took place famously at WrestleMania, where the Undertaker won the World Heavyweight title and extended his legendary WrestleMania streak, his undefeated WrestleMania streak, I should know, to 16-0. From there, the rivalry would last between the two throughout the spring of 2008. They'd have a Mania rematch at Backlash, where Taker would defend the World Heavyweight title against Edge and successfully retain the title. He'd win both matches at Mania and Backlash with the Hell's Gate submission. Then following this, on the May 2nd edition of Friday Night SmackDown, General Manager Vicky Guerrero would state that the Hell's Gate is an illegal chokehold and was banning the move to protect the SmackDown superstars. She'd also, in the process, stripped The Undertaker of the World Heavyweight title.